The German shepherd's piercing howl shattered the sacred silence of St. Michael's Catholic Church like a bullet through stained glass. Leo stood rigid, hackles raved, his muscular body trembling as he stared at Special Agent Valvadre Ramirez's flag-draped mahogany coffin. His desperate barks echoed off the vaulted ceiling, drowning out Father Miguel's prayers and the soft weeping of mourners dressed in black. "Someone get that dog out of here!" A DEA supervisor's voice cut through the chaos, his face flushed with anger. "Show some respect." Captain John Nolan watched as two officers moved to drag Leo away, but the dog broke free, lunging toward the coffin with such force that the honor guard scattered. The mourners gasped. Maria Ramirez, Valvadre's mother, covered her mouth with trembling hands, her anguished sobs filling the church. Leo's behavior wasn't just grief. Nolan had worked with this canine for 5 years through countless crime scenes. This was different. The animal wasn't mourning, he was alerting. When Leo suddenly launched himself at the coffin, clawing at the polished wood beneath the American flag with frantic desperation, chaos erupted as hands reached to restrain him. Nolan stepped forward, a cold realization washing over him. "Wait," he commanded, raising his hand. "Open it! Open the coffin! Now!" In the stunned silence that followed, only Leo's persistent, anguished howls could be heard. What happened next would haunt everyone present for the rest of their lives. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. 18 months earlier, Valvadre Ramirez sat across from Captain John Nolan in a windowless briefing room, staring at the photograph of his brother Carlos, frozen forever at 24, that brilliant smile stolen by fentanyl-laced line of cocaine. The autopsy report listed the source, Miami-Medellin Cartel, Guero Gonzalez's product. "This is a suicide mission," Nolan had warned, sliding the operation file across the scarred table. "Deep cover, no wire, no backup, 18 months minimum before we can even think about extraction." Ramirez's jaw tightened. He was Miami-born, a former Marine with a talent for languages and an intimate understanding of the streets where Carlos had died. The DEA had recruited him for exactly these kinds of operations. When do I start? The transformation into Valentino Reyes, ex-military enforcer from Bogotá with a violent reputation and a criminal record manufactured by DEA tech specialists, took 3 months of preparation. A cartel contact, already turned by federal agents, made the introduction in a blood-stained warehouse in Hialeah. Ramirez proved himself through staged fights, moving product for mid-level dealers and displaying the kind of cold efficiency that caught Guero Gonzalez's attention. The vetting process was brutal. For 6 months, Gonzalez tested him with increasingly dangerous assignments, collecting debts from armed dealers, intimidating witnesses, executing supply runs to Colombian contacts. Each task was a test of loyalty, each success bringing Ramirez closer to the inner circle, while pulling him further from the man he'd been. The breakthrough came during a restaurant meeting when rival cartel hitmen opened fire through the windows. Ramirez threw himself in front of Gonzalez, taking a bullet through his shoulder while returning fire with lethal precision. He killed 2 attackers before Gonzalez's security could even react. When the smoke cleared and Ramirez collapsed from blood loss, he'd earned something money couldn't buy: Guero Gonzalez's complete trust. He woke in a private hospital with Gonzalez sitting beside his bed. "You took a bullet for me, Valentino. You're not just an employee anymore, you're family." The promotion to personal bodyguard gave Ramirez access to everything: the financial operations, the distribution networks, the meetings with corrupt police officers who provided protection and intelligence.
Guero Gonzalez was 47, educated at the University of Miami, but ruthless in ways that would have impressed Colombian cartel bosses. His operation controlled distribution spanning Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas, a multi-million-dollar empire built on cocaine, fentanyl, and the systematic destruction of lives like Carlos's. By day, Ramirez stood at Gonzalez's shoulder, the loyal protector who'd proven his devotion in blood. By night, in a safe house only Captain Nolan knew existed, he photographed documents, recorded conversations, and documented evidence that would dismantle the entire organization. The psychological toll was devastating. He witnessed murders he couldn't prevent, watched drug shipments leave for cities where they'd kill people like his brother, laughed at Gonzalez's jokes while his soul screamed. The line between Valvadre Ramirez and Valentino Reyes blurred, until some nights he couldn't remember which man stared back from the mirror, the DEA agent seeking justice or the cartel enforcer who'd become exactly what he'd sworn to destroy.
18 months of living a lie had produced a digital archive that would destroy the Miami-Medellin cartel completely. Ramirez had documented everything, financial records showing $47 million in trackable assets, distribution routes mapped with GPS coordinates, supplier contacts in Colombia with names and photographs, money laundering operations flowing through 6 legitimate Miami businesses. The evidence was meticulous, irrefutable, and devastating. The breakthrough came 3 weeks before everything fell apart. Through a one-way mirror in Gonzalez's private office, Ramirez photographed a meeting that made his blood run cold. Gonzalez, sitting across from 3 Miami-Dade police officers, Sergeant David Torres, Detective Luis Moreno, and Officer Frank Santiago. The conversation was explicit: protection for payment, intelligence for immunity, corruption that reached into the very heart of law enforcement. Every piece of evidence lived on a micro SD card, smaller than his thumbnail, sewn into the lining of his leather jacket, the same jacket he wore every day as Valentino Reyes, his insurance policy, his brother's justice. The encrypted message to Captain Nolan was brief: "I have everything, ready to bring them down within 2 weeks." But Miguel El Escorpión Sandoval had survived 20 years in the cartel by trusting no one. Gonzalez's lieutenant noticed things others missed: the way Valentino's eyes lingered too long on documents, the subtle angle of his phone during meetings, the questions that probed just slightly deeper than a bodyguard needed to know. Sandoval began pulling threads. The military records from Bogota didn't quite align. The combat training was real, but the unit designations were wrong. Small discrepancies that wouldn't matter to anyone except a man whose survival depended on paranoia. When Sandoval presented his suspicions, Gonzalez made calls to Colombian cartel bosses who controlled the military records. The response came back within 48 hours. No record of Valentino Reyes. Never existed. The dinner invitation arrived with calculated casualness. "Join me tonight, Valentino. Just us. We need to talk about the future." Ramirez sat across from Gonzalez in the Coral Gables mansion, every instinct screaming danger, but leaving would confirm everything. The dining room was elegant: crystal chandeliers, oil paintings, wine that cost more than most people earned in a month. Gonzalez was relaxed, almost philosophical. "I've been thinking about loyalty," Gonzalez began, swirling his wine, "about what it means to trust someone with your life." He smiled, but his eyes were ice. "History is full of betrayals, you know. Julius Caesar trusted Brutus. Look how that ended." The conversation continued for an hour, Gonzalez discussing ancient betrayals, modern treacheries, and the various ways traitors had been dealt with throughout cartel history. Drowning in oil drums, buried alive in the desert, fed to pigs piece by piece. Ramirez maintained his composure, but his hand never strayed far from the weapon at his waist. He couldn't run, not without confirming Gonzalez's suspicions, not without sacrificing 18 months of evidence that would die with him. When Gonzalez finally leaned forward, his smile had vanished completely. "Tell me, Valentino, or should I call you Agent Ramirez, did you really think we wouldn't find out?"
Gonzalez stood slowly, his chair scraping against marble. "Come, let's continue this in my study." The moment Ramirez crossed the threshold, Sandoval and two enforcers materialized from the shadows. Hands like steel vices clamped onto his arms before he could reach his weapon. They slammed him into a leather chair, zip ties biting into his wrists with practiced efficiency. Gonzalez settled behind his mahogany desk, opening a wooden box with almost ceremonial care. Special Agent Valvadre Ramirez, DEA, recruited after military service. Your younger brother Carlos died at 24 from fentanyl-laced cocaine. He smiled coldly. My product. This was personal for you, wasn't it? Ramirez said nothing, his mind racing through escape scenarios that all ended the same way, with a bullet. I admire the commitment, Gonzalez continued, lifting a syringe filled with clear liquid. 18 months, taking a bullet for me, very convincing. But you made me curious about something. He held the syringe to the light, admiring it. Do you know what tetrodotoxin is, Agent Ramirez? The word sent ice through Ramirez's veins. It's a neurotoxin from the pufferfish, a sodium channel blocker. Gonzalez's voice took on a lecturer's tone, almost pleasant. Fascinating compound. It causes complete paralysis. Your muscles stop working, your breathing stops, your heart slows to maybe 3 beats per minute. But here's the beautiful part. You remain fully conscious. He approached slowly, savoring each word. You'll feel everything, hear everything, but you won't be able to move, breathe, or speak. Your heart will slow to levels medical examiners can't detect. You will appear completely, convincingly dead. The perfect murder, Gonzalez whispered, leaning close. No trauma, no suspicious substances. The medical examiner will conclude natural causes, probably cardiac arrest from the stress of undercover work. He pressed the needle against Ramirez's neck. And the most exquisite part, you'll be conscious through it all. They'll zip you in a body bag, prepare you for burial, lower you into the ground. His smile was demonic. You'll suffocate in your coffin, Agent Ramirez, aware until the very end, screaming inside a body that can't respond. The needle plunged into Ramirez's carotid artery. Fire exploded through his bloodstream. Within minutes, his fingers began tingling, going numb. 20 minutes later, he couldn't lift his arms. The paralysis spread like ice water through his veins, legs, torso, face. His breathing became shallow, then stopped entirely. His heart slowed to a crawl, but his mind remained razor-sharp, screaming inside a prison of flesh. Dump him at his apartment, Gonzalez ordered. Make it look like he died in his sleep. Ramirez felt himself lifted, carried, the world tilting in ways he couldn't see. Hours dissolved into nightmare. He heard Officer Maria Rodriguez's voice during the welfare check. "Oh God, he's not breathing! We need an ambulance!" Paramedics arrived. Fingers checked for a pulse he no longer had. A light shined into eyes that couldn't respond. No pulse, no respiration, no pupillary response. Time of death, 2:47 a.m. The words echoed through Ramirez's conscious mind like a death sentence he couldn't escape. He felt the body bag zipper close over his face, entombing him in darkness.
The medical examiner's voice was clinical, detached. Initial assessment, cardiac arrest, natural causes, no signs of foul play. Inside his paralyzed body, Valvadre Ramirez screamed silently into the void.
3 days of bureaucratic machinery had transformed a man into a funeral. Captain John Nolan stood in the parking lot of St. Michael's Catholic Church, staring at the hearse that carried his protégé's body, and felt the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. He'd recruited Ramirez to the DEA 6 years ago, barely 2 months after Carlos's overdose. He'd approved the undercover operation. He'd sent a good man into the mouth of hell and gotten back a corpse. The guilt was crushing. Leo pressed against his leg, a solid warmth in the November cold. The 7-year-old German Shepherd had been Nolan's canine partner for 5 years before taking a bullet during a warehouse raid 18 months ago. Officially retired from active duty, Leo still possessed instincts sharper than any technology. 200 narcotics arrests, never a single false alert. Dog and handler had become inseparable, Leo serving as both companion and occasional detection asset when Nolan needed those legendary senses. "Come on, boy," Nolan murmured, clipping the leash. "Ramirez loved you. He'd want you here." 300 mourners packed St. Michael's, DEA agents in dark suits, police officers in dress blues, Ramirez family members dressed in black. The mahogany casket rested before the altar, draped with an American flag, 5 military medals displayed on the polished wood. Maria Ramirez sat in the front pew, her face ravaged by grief, clutching a photograph of both her sons, one dead from an overdose, the other from what the medical examiner called natural causes. Father Miguel began the funeral mass, his voice echoing off vaulted ceilings. "We gather to celebrate the life of Special Agent Valvadre Ramirez, who gave everything in service to—" Leo stiffened. Nolan felt it through the leash, the sudden tension, ears perked forward, body rigid as steel. The dog's attention locked onto the coffin with an intensity that raised the hair on Nolan's neck. "Easy, boy," he whispered, but Leo didn't respond. During the prayers, Leo began whining, low, persistent, troubled. Nolan stroked his head, confused. Leo had been to death scenes countless times, had sat vigil at officer funerals without incident. This was different. The whining escalated to a low growl that rumbled through the church's silence. Heads turned. Mourners frowned. Nolan pulled the leash tighter, trying to calm him, but Leo's agitation only intensified. Father Miguel reached the eulogy. Special Agent Valvadre Ramirez made the ultimate sacrifice, giving his life so that others might— Leo erupted. The barking exploded like gunfire in the sacred space, frantic and desperate. Leo lunged toward the coffin with such force that Nolan nearly lost his grip. The dog strained against the leash, claws scrabbling on marble, every muscle focused on reaching that flag-draped casket. "Please," Maria Ramirez's voice cracked with anguish, "please make that dog stop. Let my son rest in peace." Nolan pulled Leo back, his mind racing. 5 years together, 200 operations. Leo had never been wrong about a detection, never shown aggression without cause, never displayed behavior like this. The dog wasn't mourning. This was his alert stance, the same rigid intensity he showed when detecting narcotics. But what could he possibly be detecting in a coffin? The impossible thought crept through Nolan's mind like ice water. What if Leo knows something we don't?
The funeral procession wound through Miami streets to Woodlawn Park Cemetery, a somber parade of flashing lights and grief. 200 mourners gathered around the open grave, a wound in the earth waiting to swallow another victim of the drug war. 2 DEA agents in dress uniforms stood at attention as the honor guard, their faces carved from stone. Maria Ramirez clutched a framed photograph of Carlos against her chest, both her sons now lost to the same cartel, one to their poison, the other to their violence. Father Miguel raised his hands over the coffin. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We commit Special Agent Valvadre Ramirez to... Leo exploded with a violence that tore the leash from Nolan's grip. The German shepherd launched himself at the coffin like a missile, claws raking across the polished mahogany, desperately seeking purchase on the metal fittings. His barking transcended anything Nolan had heard in 5 years of partnership, frantic, anguished, almost human in its desperation. Leo tore at the coffin seal with his teeth, bit at the red fabric draping, clawed at the American flag as if trying to rip it away. "Get that animal away from my son!" someone screamed. "This is desecration! Captain, control your dog!" Nolan lunged forward, wrapping both arms around Leo as the dog fought with supernatural strength. 70 pounds of muscle and determination straining toward that coffin with every fiber of his being. The same alert behavior, the exact same intensity Leo showed when detecting narcotics concealed in walls, vehicles, luggage. But what could he possibly be detecting? Maria Ramirez's scream cut through the chaos. "How dare you bring that beast here? My son is dead! He's dead!" Nolan held Leo back, the dog's claws gouging furrows in the earth, and felt the impossible thought crystallize into certainty. Leo was a detection dog trained to find what humans couldn't see. For 5 years, he'd never given a false alert, not once, and right now, every instinct in that animal's body was screaming that something was wrong with this coffin. The medical examiner had pronounced Ramirez dead. Rigor mortis had set in, the body had been embalmed and prepared for burial. Every rational piece of evidence said Valvadre Ramirez was gone. But Leo's behavior didn't lie. "I need to open the coffin," Nolan heard himself say. The cemetery erupted. DEA agents moved to restrain him. Family members threatened arrest. His supervisor's face turned purple with rage. "Captain, you've lost your mind. Stand down." "Leo has never been wrong," Nolan's voice cracked. "Not once in 5 years. If there's even a chance, if there's any possibility that... My son is dead. He's dead." Maria Ramirez collapsed against relatives, her sobs tearing the air. Father Miguel stepped forward, his weathered face grave but compassionate. "Captain Nolan is asking us to choose hope over certainty, to trust that God works in ways we cannot understand." He turned to Maria. "Hope is never desecration, my child. Let him look." The silence stretched like broken glass. Maria Ramirez stared at Nolan, at Leo still straining toward the coffin, at the impossible choice before her. To allow this potential violation of her son's rest, or to live forever wondering if they'd buried him alive. Her nod was barely perceptible, but it was permission. Nolan's hands trembled as he reached for the coffin seal.
The funeral director approached with hands that shook as badly as Nolan's, carrying tools that had never been meant for use at graveside. Silence fell over the cemetery like a held breath, 200 people watching in horrified fascination as the seal was broken, as the impossible became real. The coffin lid lifted with a whisper of silk lining. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Valvadre Ramirez lay peaceful in his dress uniform, hands folded across his chest, 5 military medals gleaming on polished wood beside him. He appeared completely, utterly lifeless, skin waxy pale, lips slightly parted, face relaxed in what looked like eternal sleep. Nolan leaned close, studying Ramirez's face with the intensity of a man willing something to be true. Leo pushed forward, whining desperately, his cold nose pressing against Ramirez's folded hands.
Then Nolan saw it. A flutter, barely perceptible, the right eyelid twitching with movement so subtle it could have been imagination. His eye just moved. Nolan's shout shattered the silence. "I saw it move!" "It's a trick of the light," someone protested. "Bodies can twitch from decomposition." "He's been dead for 3 days, Captain?" Nolan pressed fingers against Ramirez's carotid artery, searching for a pulse that wasn't there. Nothing. No heartbeat, no warmth, but that twitch, he'd seen it. He fumbled for his phone, activating the flashlight, holding it inches from Ramirez's right eye. The pupil contracted. It was minuscule, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable, a living response to light stimulus. "Get an ambulance!" Nolan's roar carried across the cemetery. "He's still alive! He's still alive!" Chaos erupted like a breaking dam. Maria Ramirez collapsed, caught by relatives before she hit the ground. DEA agents swarmed forward, phones pressed to ears, shouting into 911. Mourners surged toward the coffin, disbelief and desperate hope warring on every face. Leo launched himself into the coffin, his tongue frantically licking Ramirez's face as if trying to wake him from nightmare sleep. The dog's whines turned to something almost joyful. Inside his paralyzed prison, Ramirez heard everything, felt Leo's warm tongue on his cold skin, heard Nolan's voice, his mother's anguished cry, the chaos of resurrection. He screamed inside his motionless body, desperate to signal awareness, to move a finger, to open his eyes, to show them he was still in there, still fighting, still alive. Nothing responded. His body remained a corpse that breathed only silence. 7 minutes that stretched like hours before the ambulance screamed into the cemetery, paramedics leaping out with equipment that seemed insufficient for raising the dead. "Sir, this man was pronounced dead 3 days ago," the lead paramedic protested, staring at the scene with undisguised skepticism. "Check ECG and EEG," Nolan's voice was steel. "Do it now." Portable monitors emerged from bags, leads attached to Ramirez's chest. The paramedics' faces transformed from skepticism to shock as the screen flickered to life. Faint electrical cardiac activity, barely 5 beats per minute, but present. "How is this?" "Move," Nolan commanded. "Miami General, full emergency escort, now." The ambulance departed with sirens wailing, carrying a miracle no one could explain. A man 3 days dead who somehow, impossibly, still lived.
Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent 20 years in emergency medicine and thought she'd seen everything. The man on her gurney proved her wrong. Standard vitals revealed nothing. No measurable pulse, no respiration, no blood pressure. By every conventional measure, Special Agent Valvadre Ramirez was a corpse that had been dead for 78 hours. "But the ECG shows electrical activity," she murmured, studying the monitor with furrowed brow. "That's impossible if he's been dead for days." The hospital ECG confirmed what the portable monitor had detected. Cardiac electrical impulses present, but profoundly suppressed, 5 beats per minute versus the normal 60 to 80. Then the EEG brainwave scan revealed something that sent ice down her spine. Low-level delta wave activity, consistent with deep unconsciousness, but present. "He's in there," Vasquez breathed. "He's conscious." The puzzle consumed her. What could cause death-like paralysis while maintaining consciousness and minimal brain activity? She pulled up the toxicology database, searching through rare poisons that mimic death. Curare, botulinum, saxitoxin. Nothing fit the complete symptom profile. Then she found it. Tetrodotoxin, sourced from pufferfish, historically used in Haitian zombie rituals to create the appearance of death. a sodium channel blocker that caused complete paralysis, undetectable vital signs, and conscious awareness. The symptoms matched perfectly, impossibly, horrifyingly perfectly. "Time matters here," Vasquez told Nolan grimly. "He's been paralyzed for 78 hours. Without immediate intervention, oxygen deprivation will cause irreversible brain damage or death." What do we do? There's no FDA-approved antidote. Vasquez was already moving, barking orders to nurses. But there's an experimental protocol: anticholinesterase drugs combined with mechanical respiratory support. We're going to bring him back. The intubation was brutal necessity. Ramirez felt the breathing tube forced down his throat, the violation of plastic invading his airway, and couldn't cough, couldn't gag, couldn't signal the terror that screamed through his conscious mind. The ventilator began forcing air into paralyzed lungs. Edrophonium dripped into his IV, attempting to stimulate dormant neural pathways. A slow infusion of anticholinesterase followed, gradually working to reverse the sodium channel blockage. 2 hours felt like eternity. Then, on the monitor sensors, a finger twitched. Vasquez leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. Progressive signs of recovery emerged like spring after winter. Toes flexing, hand clenching, facial muscles responding to neural commands they'd been denied for days. Ramirez's chest suddenly heaved on its own, fighting the ventilator, taking control of breath stolen 78 hours ago. His first independent breath. His eyes opened. Tears streamed down his face, decades of emotion compressed into crystalline drops. His mouth moved, forming shapes without sound, desperate attempts to communicate that he was back, he was alive, he was real. Maria Ramirez gripped her son's hand with both of hers, sobbing, "Mijo, I'm here. We're all here. You came back to us." Ramirez's lips trembled. His vocal cords, still partially paralyzed, managed to shape a single word, barely audible, more breath than sound, but unmistakable. "Gonzalez." The name hung in the air like a promise of reckoning.
4 days in the ICU, watching Ramirez slowly reclaim his body, fingers that could grip, legs that could shift, a voice that progressed from whisper to rasp to something approaching normal. Captain Nolan sat beside the hospital bed, notepad ready, and asked the question that mattered most. "Who did this to you?" Ramirez's voice was still rough, damaged vocal cords fighting for every syllable. "Gonzalez. He figured out I was DEA, injected me with tetrodotoxin, said he'd let them bury me alive while I was still conscious. His hands clenched the sheets. He wanted me to suffer, to know what was happening. That son of a... My jacket," Ramirez interrupted, urgency cutting through exhaustion. "Everything's in my jacket, the leather one I wore as Valentino. Where is it?" Confusion flickered across Nolan's face. "Your personal effects were stored at the funeral home. Why? What's in the jacket?" "Everything. 18 months of evidence. It's all there." 30 minutes later, Nolan returned with the worn leather jacket that had been Valentino Reyes's signature. His hands moved expertly along the lining, feeling for irregularities until his fingers found the subtle bulge in the inner pocket seam. Careful cutting revealed what looked like nothing, a micro SD card smaller than a thumbnail, worth more than its weight in diamonds. The card contained Ramirez's entire operation, photos documenting meetings, financial transactions, drug shipments, audio recordings of conversations that proved conspiracy, ledgers showing $47 million in trackable cartel assets, distribution maps spanning 3 states, Colombian supplier contacts with names, faces, and communication protocols, and the crown jewel, photographs of Sergeant David Torres, Detective Luis Moreno, and Officer Frank Santiago sitting across from Gonzalez, corruption laid bare in high-resolution digital clarity. "We've got them," Nolan breathed. We've got all of them." Within hours, the hospital conference room transformed into a command center. DEA and FBI coordinators studied the evidence with the intensity of archaeologists examining holy relics. Time was critical. Gonzalez believed Ramirez and his evidence were 6 feet underground. The element of surprise was a weapon they'd only get one chance to use. The operation plan emerged with military precision. 50 federal agents, SWAT teams from 3 jurisdictions, search warrants for 15 locations simultaneously executed. Gonzalez's Coral Gables mansion, cartel warehouses in Hialeah and Homestead, the homes of 3 corrupt officers, 6 money laundering businesses, a web of coordinated strikes designed to decapitate the entire organization before word could spread. From his hospital bed, Ramirez provided details no surveillance could capture: the layout of Gonzalez's compound, security protocols, personnel schedules, the location of his private safe. His voice grew stronger with each briefing, as if reclaiming his purpose restored what the poison had stolen. The secure video link showed tactical teams reviewing compound blueprints Ramirez sketched from memory. SWAT commanders absorbed information about guard rotations, security cameras, escape routes Gonzalez might use. Nolan stood at the foot of Ramirez's bed as the final preparations concluded. "Dawn tomorrow, simultaneous execution. We're going to finish what you started, Agent Ramirez." He paused, meeting his protégé's eyes. "And you're going to be there to see it." Ramirez's sharp smile was like broken glass. "Gonzalez wanted me buried alive. Instead, I'm going to watch his empire burn."
Dawn broke at 4:47 a.m. across Miami, and with it came reckoning. 20 federal agents breached Gonzalez's Coral Gables compound gates with an armored vehicle, the crash of splintering wrought iron announcing that resurrection had come with teeth. SWAT teams swarmed the perimeter in coordinated precision, while Gonzalez, roused from sleep by alarms, fled through the underground tunnel he'd constructed for exactly this contingency. He nearly made it to the waterfront boat dock. Federal agents intercepted him with flashlights and rifles, a wall of overwhelming force that left no room for heroics. Gonzalez raised his hands slowly, his silk pajamas ridiculous against body armor and tactical gear. "How?" The word escaped him like a prayer to a god that had abandoned him. "He was dead. I made sure he was dead." "Tetrodotoxin wears off," the lead agent said flatly. "Valvadre Ramirez sends his regards." The compound yielded a fortune in evidence: 2.3 tons of cocaine with a street value of $75 million, 89 kilograms of fentanyl, $8.3 million in cash stacked in a climate-controlled vault, and 47 weapons, including military-grade assault rifles that had no business in civilian hands. Across Miami, 37 cartel members fell in synchronized arrests. Torres, Moreno, and Santiago were dragged from their homes in handcuffs, bank records proving bribe payments they'd never be able to explain. 6 money laundering businesses were shuttered, their financial records seized. Luxury vehicles, real estate, boats, an empire built on suffering dismantled in a single morning. The media coverage was immediate and relentless. The DEA agent who'd been buried alive, the dog who wouldn't accept death, the cartel that thought they'd gotten away with murder. The trial was swift. Overwhelming evidence left defense attorneys with nothing but pleas for mercy that fell on deaf ears. Guero Gonzalez received life without parole plus 200 consecutive years, a mathematical impossibility that expressed society's rage. Miguel Sandoval and other lieutenants received 35 to 50 years each. The corrupt officers were stripped of badges and sentenced to 25 years federal prison for racketeering and conspiracy. All seized assets were forfeited, millions of dollars redirected to drug treatment programs and supporting families destroyed by cartel violence.
blood money transformed into healing. Ramirez spent 6 weeks in hospital recovery, intensive physical therapy teaching his body to remember what paralysis had stolen. The PTSD diagnosis was inevitable. Conscious experience of his own death and burial created trauma no amount of justice could erase. Counseling became part of his new normal. "I can't do undercover work anymore," he told Nolan. "I request transfer to the training division." The Medal of Valor ceremony drew 500 people. Ramirez stood in dress uniform, his mother crying beside him, as the DEA administrator pinned the highest honor on his chest. Then Nolan stepped forward with Leo, presenting the Canine Medal of Honor to a German shepherd who'd seen what humans could not. Later, Ramirez visited Woodlawn Park Cemetery, this time to place flowers on Carlos's grave, not to rise from his own. "It's done, Carlos," he whispered to the headstone. "They can't hurt anyone else now. Leo saved me so I could finish what you started when you died." Leo pressed against his leg, solid and warm and alive. Ramirez knelt, embracing the dog who'd refused to let him go. Weeks later, at the canine training facility, Ramirez told new handlers, "Trust your partner. They see what we can't. They know what we don't." Leo saw life where everyone else saw death, and that made all the difference.